The Tea Biz podcast delivers tea news that you need to know. A recap of the week's major headlines with commentary and cultural trends hosted by Dan Bolton. It is the voice of origin for tea professionals and enthusiasts worldwide.
Tea nourishes and inspires. It is an ancient plant-based medicine that simultaneously heals and energizes the body as it soothes the mind. Making fine tea is a blend of artistry and craftsmanship. The $200 billion tea trade is fundamentally local, yet exerts global influence, employing millions to enhance the well-being of all. Hello, everyone. Here are this week's headlines. Red Sea shipping attacks pause following the Gaza ceasefire. Carlsberg acquires UK beverage bottler Britvic for $4.28 billion. Researchers find that consuming oxidized tea reduces deaths in patients with chronic kidney disease. Plus, tea firms and fans share financial success. Tea stakeholders globally find it difficult to access capital via traditional financial networks. Institutional investors cite daunting obstacles, including persistently low prices, a fragmented supply chain, and low profit margins in commodity markets. The tea industry's vulnerability to climate change heightens risk. Since 2021, several tea companies have successfully turned to equity crowdfunding as an alternative to traditional loans and elusive venture capital. Nepal Tea Collective founder Nishal Banskota raised more than $600,000 from small investors to expand operations, including new retail stores in Kathmandu. Young Mountain Tea founder Raj Vabel's ongoing We Funder campaign has raised $225,000 to construct and operate a community-owned tea processing facility in Kumbha, India. Others include Revival Tea and Kusa Tea and Coffee, which raised $1.2 million in 2022. Joining us today is Peter Yang, President and CEO of Oversubscribe, a non-crypto, fully regulated way for customers and fans to fund company growth and earn back a share of the money made. In memoriam, Singpo Chief Duabisa Nat Nong has passed at 71. The government of Assam gave him full state honors at a cremation ceremony on January 17th. Chief Nong was a direct descendant of the Singpo chief who introduced British explorers to the Assamaka tea bush 180 years ago. More in a minute, but first, this important message.
What happens when businesses along the tea supply chain get together and support women and children in tea communities? The Mother and Child-Friendly Seal for Responsible Business is creating long-term positive impacts, making your cup of Ceylon tea all the sweeter. Learn more at srilanka-motherandchildseal.org.
Shipping firms are cautiously optimistic that a Gaza truce will enable safe passage through the Suez Canal. The 14-month disruption of the Red Sea trade route has cost tea companies millions of dollars. All European-bound tea from Asia, South Asia, and Africa was forced to pay for up to 10 additional transit days around South Africa to reach UK, Danish, and German ports. Yemen-based Houthis announced the group would halt attacks on vessels and Israel during a ceasefire, but left open the possibility of resuming attacks. The 42-day suspension of hostilities is contingent on the release of hostages and the complete withdrawal of Israeli armed forces from the Gaza Strip. Maritime risk firm Omri said Houthi actions will continue while Israeli military forces operate within the Gaza Strip. Reuters reports that container giant AP Moller-Maersk and oil tanker owner Hafina Limited are still monitoring the situation. Maersk said it would return to the Red Sea and sail through the notorious Bab el-Mandeb Strait when it's safe, adding that it was still too early to speculate about timing. Meanwhile, Drewry's World Container Index decreased 11% this week to $3,445 per 40-foot shipping container, but shipping insurance premiums remain high. Monroe Anderson, head of operations at Marine War Risk and Insurance Specialist Vessel Protect, told Reuters, quote, "This remains a deeply complex and volatile region where the idea of threat levels to vessels and their crews substantially residing in the near term is unrealistic. The mass resumption of transit through the Red Sea, which never stopped, would be significant for shippers and commodity markets." Quote, "We might see some ships resume Red Sea transit in the coming weeks," end quote, said Jacob Larson, Chief Safety and Security Officer at shipping trade group BIMCO. Quote, "But it will require fairly strong indications of ceasefire stability before shipping in general resumes transits to pre-conflict levels. The container lines will probably take a little longer." End quote. Biz Insight. The threat of extraordinary U.S. tariffs remains. Tea shipped from China is currently subject to a 15% Section 301 tariff and now faces an additional 10% levy. This week, the U.S. House of Representatives introduced legislation to revoke China's permanent normal trade relations status. If enacted, the legislation would phase in substantial tariffs, starting at 10% in the first year and escalating to 100% by the fifth year. The bill would eliminate the de minimis exemption for low-value Chinese imports, which allows goods valued under $800 to enter the U.S. duty-free. Low-cost tea from China could potentially qualify for the de minimis exemption. However, ongoing legislative efforts might change this, eliminating exemptions for all Chinese goods. Tariffs invariably lead to supply chain disruptions as tea companies restructure their supply chains to avoid higher expenses. Carlsberg UK Holdings has acquired Britvic, a leading international soft beverage manufacturer and distributor with a portfolio that includes soft drinks, energy drinks, plant milks, bottled juices, sparkling water, mixers, canned coffee, and ready-to-drink tea. Britvic's annual turnover was £1.9 billion, that's about $2.3 billion for the fiscal year ending September 2024. During that same period, Carlsberg reported an annual turnover of 75 billion Danish kroner, which is about $10.5 billion. Britvic produces and distributes Lipton iced tea among several brands, including Pepsi Max, Gatorade, 7-Up, and Mountain Dew, under an exclusive licensing agreement with PepsiCo in Great Britain and Ireland. With this acquisition, Carlsberg strengthens its relationship with PepsiCo, becoming its largest bottling partner in Europe. In a prepared statement posted online, Carlsberg Group CEO Jacob Arup Anderson said, quote, "The Britvic acquisition is a pivotal milestone in the history of Carlsberg as we deepen our commitment to the UK market and write an ambitious next chapter in our growth story. Soft drinks are an attractive category that also brings significant synergies with beer. Britvic is a large-scale, well-established business with a strong portfolio of much-loved owned and partnership brands, consistently delivering strong results." End quote. The transition brings together an experienced and capable management team from both businesses that will drive attractive growth for the combination. Britvic's French tea brand, Tesser, includes a range of syrups, some of which can be used to create tea-flavored beverages. In Brazil, Britvic offers Natural Tea, a brand acquired in 2015. Natural Tea promotes a balanced lifestyle, providing herbal teas flavored with different fruit combinations. Quote, With the transaction complete, we are excited to create a highly attractive supplier of beer and soft drinks in the UK with an efficient supply chain and distribution network that provides customers with a portfolio of market-leading brands and world-class service, writes Carlsberg. Paul Davies, formerly CEO of Carlsberg Marston Brewing Company, was named CEO of the newly formed Carlsberg Britvic in the United Kingdom, effective today. Elsewhere, Pedro Magalhães retains his role as Managing Director of Britvic Brazil, and Kevin Donnelly retains his role as Managing Director of Britvic Ireland. Both markets are now part of the Carlsberg Group. The sale was announced in June 2024. The £3.3 billion sterling deal was structured at 1,315 pence per Britvic share and included a special dividend of 25 pence per share. Britvic was delisted from the London Stock Exchange on January 20th. TBiz correspondent Megan Francis reports that a study published in January in the journal Renal Failure found that drinking up to 4 cups of tea per day was significantly associated with reduced deaths in patients with early-stage chronic kidney disease, CKD, and that oxidized tea has a particularly protective effect. Researchers from Guangzhou University of Chinese Medicine in China conducted a comprehensive secondary analysis of data collected by the National Health and Nutrition Examinations Survey from 1999 to 2018. The primary goal was to examine the relationship between tea consumption and mortality in CKD patients at all stages. From an additional 45,000 participants, the researchers narrowed their study focus to a cohort of 17,500 individuals. The study excluded pregnant participants and those who adhered to extreme dietary habits, defined as consuming more than 10 cups of tea daily. The cohort included 12,900 participants who reported never consuming tea, 3,400 who consumed 0 to 4 cups daily, and 1,205 who drank more than 4 cups of tea a day. During the follow-up period, researchers tracked 5,835 deaths. After adjusting for confounding variables, researchers found that consuming up to 4 cups of unsweetened tea per day was significantly associated with a lower risk overall of mortality compared to those who never drank tea. Oxidized tea had a particularly protective effect. Replacing 1 cup of green tea with a cup of oxidized tea, such as black tea or oolong tea, was associated with a 10% lower risk of all-cause mortality in CKD stages 1 and 2. The study's authors surmised that the protective effect of oxidized tea may be due to therarubins and theaflavins, compounds produced during the enzymatic fermentation of fresh tea leaves. Black tea polyphenols have been shown to have a positive effect on renal health. An estimated 10% of the world's population, over 800 million people, are impacted by CKD, and that number continues to rise. As their kidney function declines, CKD patients are often advised to adjust their diets, which can call the consumption of tea into question. While researchers acknowledge that an observational study has limitations, its findings are encouraging for tea lovers affected by kidney disease. Next, Arvinda Anantharaman in Bengaluru reports on this week's India Tea News.
India Tea News for the week ending 24th January 2025. Indian tea producers are flagging substandard imports, even as Darjeeling's tea producers expressed concern about illegal imports from Nepal this week. The Confederation of Indian Small Tea Growers Association, that's SISTA, has submitted a letter to the Union Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal, expressing concern about the growing influx of low-quality tea from Kenya and Nepal. The letter said that these imports impact the quality of Indian tea. negatively and also impact demand and pricing. Sista's president Bijoy Gopal Chakraborty shared data that shows a 288% increase in Kenyan imports between January and October 2024, which is up from 3.53 million kilos in 2023 to 13.71 million kilos in 2024. These teas are used for blending and also for re-exports. Imports from Nepal stood at 13.66 million kilos, much of it sold within the country. Bijoy highlighted the lack of regulatory food safety measures on imported tea, especially that coming from Nepal. 8 years ago, he added the tea board decided to counter oversupply by insisting that gardens in North India closed for winter. The letter said the unchecked flow of imported tea undermines these efforts in this situation, and flooding the market with cheap, inferior quality tea will affect the reputation of Indian tea as well. This letter follows a submission by the Indian Tea Association last week on the same issue. In other news, the 45-day Kumbha Mela, an important Hindu pilgrimage in the state of Uttar Pradesh, has started, and the event is expected to see 250 million people. Tea is playing a small part in this. Chai Point, the Indian tea brand, was selected as a tea partner along with the Karnataka Milk Federation. And together, they have set up 10 stores for visitors to the Kumbh Mela, and Chai Point expects to serve over 1 crore or 10 million cups of tea in this period, and are hoping and looking at a Guinness World Record for the most teacups sold at a single event. The event began on 13 January and expected to conclude on 26 February. And lastly, in a bit of human interest news, to promote football among young girls living in tea gardens, the Assam Tea Tribes Sports and Cultural Association has planned an all-Assam inter-tea garden women's football tournament in Dibrugarh. And this will be the second edition of the program, and the preliminary round will kick off this week across the state. We'll have more updates on this as the event and tournament progresses.
And now, a word from this week's sponsor.
Hello, I'm Bogdan, a passionate tea drinker and the inventor of the ultimate tea machine, the Brew Maker 1. Preparation is key to making fine tea. Sequential steepings deliver the best taste possible and unlock the true value of whole leaf teas and botanicals. Brew automates that process without using any pots or capsules. This simple-to-operate, smartphone-controlled device stores steeping profiles to consistently make great tea at the push of a button. Brew also reduces time, waste, and energy. That's because I engineered the brew to remember control settings for temperature, brewing time, and quantity. Using my patented process lets you stack steep simply and conveniently.
Tea stakeholders globally find it difficult to access capital via traditional financial networks. Institutional investors cite daunting obstacles, including persistently low prices, a fragmented supply chain, and low profit margins in commodity markets. The tea industry's vulnerability to climate change heightens risk. Since 2021, several tea companies have successfully turned to equity crowdfunding as an alternative to traditional loans and elusive venture capital. Nepal Tea Collective founder Nishal Benskoda raised more than $600,000 from small investors to expand operations, including new retail stores in Kathmandu. Young Mountain Tea founder Raj Vabel's ongoing We Funder campaign has raised $225,000 to construct and operate a community-owned tea processing facility in Kumbha, India. Others include Revival Tea and Kusa Tea and Coffee, which raised $1.2 million in 2022. Joining us today is Peter Yang, President and CEO of Oversubscribe, a non-crypto, fully regulated way for customers and fans to fund company growth and earn back a share of the money made. Peter graduated from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology with a degree in computer science and holds an MBA from the University of California, Berkeley. He worked for 15 years in Silicon Valley at banks as a Goldman Sachs financial analyst and at Emergence Capital Partners, and was head of corporate development at Corel Corporation. Peter and co-founder Jay Kim founded New York City-based Oversubscribe in 2018. It's my pleasure today to introduce our listeners to Peter Yang, co-founder of Oversubscribe. Peter, thanks for joining us.
Good. I think this will make a really good conversation here.
The tea sector must focus on creating, branding, and marketing value-added specialty teas and premium CTC. It must also invest in digitally transforming its supply chain to highlight transparency and long-term sustainability, all of which requires outside investment. Since ArtistShare pioneered the concept in 2001, crowdfunding ventures have evolved into sophisticated, multifaceted platforms that support creators and mission-focused businesses. Drawing on the enthusiasm of their fans, entrepreneurs can effectively leverage crowdfunding to secure needed cash, validate ideas, and build strong communities around their brands. Will you explain the fundamental reasons why crowdfunding has flourished?
Funding might not exist from the large kind of institutional investors who are interested in a certain profile of company or certain profile of business, and which makes sense because that's their primary objective as a fund or a company is to make financial returns. So they have a very high bar for what they'll look at, and they'll have a very high bar for what kinds of returns they're looking for, and they kind of have a global perspective here on finding the companies that fit those particular characteristics. But, there's a whole class of companies out there which might not fit what a venture capital firm is looking for, but have different characteristics in place where they might be able to raise funding from other sources. So in particular with crowdfunding and the particular flavor that Oversubscribe uses called equity crowdfunding, you're looking for a different set of characteristics. In this case, it's more that these are companies where they're broadly understandable to a broad set of folks. And then those folks might be interested in funding it for smaller amounts. They might be investing for financial reasons. They might be investing because they believe in the product. They might be investing for other reasons as well. The kind of crowdfunding we enable here at Oversubscribe is called equity crowdfunding, as you know well, Dan. The idea there is that this really came out of a set of new regulations that were put in place after the Great Recession, after kind of the big global pullback of 2007, 2008. And what came out here in the U.S. as a result of that is something called the Jobs Act, which was a whole package of measures enacted by Congress with the real purpose of stimulating business in America again. And it was a whole package of different measures which touched on all different aspects of business. So one small corner of this was something called the Equity Crowdfunding Act. And the idea here was that there's a whole host of businesses where they might not attract the attention necessarily of private equity firms or venture capital investors because they don't have the characteristics necessarily that they're looking for. But might be able to find other sets of investors, and in particular individuals who might be interested in investing them, who haven't been able to invest in these kinds of companies in the past. So we can get into all the details of that as we talk about equity crowdfunding more. But the idea here was that, there is capital sitting there out there in the world that can help these businesses to grow, which did a set of regulations that was in place from the SEC to protect investors, was not allowing folks to invest in these companies. So that's what the Jobs Act allowed to happen. What allowed folks to do is everyday mainstream investors can then invest not just in big public companies on the stock market like your GEs or your Googles or your GMs of the world that are kind of large companies that have already had public offerings and are on the stock market. But everyday investors, mainstream investors, were able to invest in small private businesses that were not yet on a public market, but that could use the capital as well.
Peter, you contrast online equity investment with crowdfunding donations.
Crowdfunding itself, separate from investing, has been around for a while now. And that first wave were companies like Kickstarter or Indiegogo, and we've had companies like Patreon and then GoFundMe and more charitable contexts. So the idea here basically was outgrowth of the growth of the internet, right? That because now it's easy and frictionless to bring together a lot of people for certain purposes, given the growth in financial tools and in terms of building these platforms, they could be brought together for good causes in the case of something like a GoFundMe, or to help pre-fund a company, like in the case of a Kickstarter, where you might pre-order a product or get perks, or in the case of things like Patreon, maybe pay a subscription price to support your favorite content creator. So the idea here was exactly like you're saying. People were getting used to using money online, and people had the idea, hey, if people need to aggregate that money to do something bigger, we now have the tools to do that. But the big distinction there versus what this Jobs Act and the Equity Crowdfunding Act enabled was, in all of those cases, anything given back to the fans who funded that crowdfunding campaign, whether that's to fund a new product or to fund a movie that a director wanted to make, or whether that's to fund a new charitable campaign, they cannot be given financial returns as part of that. So as you spoke to, they might be able to, for example, get merchandise as a part of that. So, hey, get a free t-shirt, or some free samples of the product, or they might be able to pre-order a product. If you give money early, you'll get an early version of the product at a much lower price than anybody else will, because we're going to use that funding to build it. But the big distinction there is that, those platforms by law cannot share any of the financial results that come out of the use of that money back with the folks who contributed money. So, for example, a Kickstarter, if you did buy, a pre-order product to allow this company to execute on this product vision, even if that company then goes on to be a smashing success and has an IPO on the NASDAQ and is making billions of dollars years later, that money you put in to help them get started just got you nothing else, right? So that early order of the product, even though you identified that this was a great company, a great product, and you wanted to put in money early. Putting in money early and taking a big risk, because some of these campaigns, in some cases, the company was never able to execute on the vision, and the money might not even return the product they thought they were ordering. They said, hey, there might be other ways to do this. So equity crowdfunding kind of came out of that. Small investors can put money together to help invest in a large company. But it's really investing is one way to think about it, right? It's really acting as small, almost angel investors in a company, and aggregating money from many small investors to help a smaller company accelerate their growth. But, there's many contexts where folks might not feel the goodwill necessarily towards that, but where they see the opportunity for financial return, and they want to be able to participate in that as well. And that's what this new class of equity crowdfunding portals and platforms allows for. And they've kind of combined a few concepts, the idea of crowdfunding, the idea of actually investing in a private company together to allow for that kind of financial return to be returned to the fans as well.
You co-founded Oversubscribed to help influencers and creatives enhance their visibility and earn a share of sponsorships, merchandise, and ad revenue they generate from social media. Will this work for other fan-based businesses?
Sure. So here at Oversubscribe, we like to think of ourselves as a very mission-driven company. So what we're here to do is help every person, every company we work with reach their full potential, regardless of where they're starting from, right? So regardless of where they're starting out from socioeconomically, or regardless of, their level of expertise about certain areas, or in the area of raising money, or regardless of the size of their network, we want to help them to reach their full potential for what they're trying to do, whatever that might be, through our efforts here. So that's very much the case with the creators and the creators we're working with, but it's also how we think about things with our company, or how we think about partnering with other companies. We're very, very focused on helping online content creators to reach their full potential, to be able to bring their audiences the best of what they can bring through what we're able to do. The way we do that is through a platform where we help creators and creatives to raise funding, growth funding, and that can come from financial investments from their own fans. The key insight there for us was that, a big question if you start to have a platform where you're running even a traditional crowdfunding campaign, but also these equity crowdfunding campaigns, is where do those investors come from, and what is their incentive for investing here, right? So, for example, if you run a Kickstarter, and Dan, I know you did, and we're very successful in that, you have to be pretty savvy about marketing it and promoting it, both to maybe your existing network or existing audience, but also to folks who may have never heard about you. Not everybody is in a necessarily position to do that, so they might have to spend a lot of money just to market this crowdfunding campaign, not even their own business, for varying results there. But when we thought about online content creators in particular, we thought, hey, they are really set up well to be able to capitalize on this infrastructure that's in place to help them raise money, because they already have almost a built-in investor base here of folks who are invested in them in many ways, invested in them emotionally. They've invested a lot of time in following their content. They might be invested in the individuals who are behind that content, might even be invested in seeing them succeed if they've been following them for a long time. And that's their own followers, their own readers, their own listeners, their own viewers. Who have, they've established that relationship over time. They trust that individual, that set of individuals who are behind that content, and they might be interested in supporting them, not just for altruistic reasons, but because if they put money in, they'll be able to get more great content or new products or help that set of content creators reach their ultimate vision there. So with that insight, we said, okay, this is a perfect market to help to raise funding in this way, because they won't have to spend all that money to market and bring in new investors. Instead, in this case, they have a set of people that they already have an established relationship with, who are quote unquote invested in them already, who might be willing to invest in them financially at this point as well, to both invest in the vision and get more of the stuff from their favorite content creators that they wouldn't be able to get otherwise. But also be able to share in the financial success as well. So that's what we've been doing here at Oversubscribe. We think it makes particular sense in the last few years because we think audiences have become a lot savvier about how online content is being made these days. So there's platforms like yours, Dan, where you're independent content platform where you're running ads and doing things like that. But we also work with a lot of individual creators as well, folks like YouTubers or Instagram creators or podcasters or Twitch streamers who are streaming about gaming. Audiences have become a lot savvier about how the world works for these creators, and they know in the end, for almost all these folks now, it's not just for fun. It's not just a creative outlet. It's not just a side hustle. It's not just a labor of love. But there's usually a business attached to it as well. That these folks are making money from ads and sponsorships. So they felt less comfortable about kind of using those traditional methods of crowdfunding to support these folks. They start to see, hey, I'm putting this money in for them to build something that's going to generate even more revenue for them. But if they succeed, they keep those proceeds and I just end up with this t-shirt. So that insight, together with the insight that, hey, those fans still are interested in supporting their favorite creators, led us to build Oversubscribe, where fans can support their favorite online content creators who might have a harder time getting money from those institutional funding sources that we talked about, like your VCs or your private equity firms or your banks, but could still use the funding. And have this built-in investor base of their fans who they can appeal to. But those fans are most interested in investing if they can share in those financial results. We've run some proprietary surveys of YouTube viewers and social media followers where they said 80% of the most engaged followers are very interested in supporting their favorite content creators with some type of financial investment where they can share in the financial success. But 2/3 said they would very much want to see some kind of financial return over just doing it for rewards or kind of early merchandise and things like that. We think that's the right timing for us to come out on the market with a product like this. We're helping a lot of creators on all different types of platforms, all different sizes, to raise money to invest in their growth, whether that's to invest in the content itself or invest in new products or invest in business growth. We're helping creators of all sizes across all platforms to really accelerate their growth, to reach their full potential through what we're doing here at Oversubscribe.
Tea Journey magazine is partnering with Oversubscribe to finance a move to the tea lands in 2025. Relocating will enhance our ability to educate tea enthusiasts and facilitate the exchange of news and business insights via the Tea Biz blog and podcast. We intend to celebrate Tea Journey's 10th anniversary in Bengaluru, India, at offices managed by editor Arvinda Anantharaman. We chose Oversubscribe to encourage our friends to invest in our future.
We're so excited to be able to help you in this way, Dan and Tea Journey and Tea Biz. Not only are you a platform where you have a passionate reader base, right? These are folks who are not just, casual readers, kind of reading their entertainment for each day, but these are folks who who are lovers of tea, right? Or lovers of the tea business, who are there to learn more and to learn more about what's out there in the tea world and kind of understand the whole value chain of what's happening in the tea lands all the way through the products they're drinking themselves and the different products you're exposing them to. So you've done a fantastic job in building a platform where you are catering to their needs and giving them the information they need, but they are also passionate about both the subject area and what you're doing here as a platform as well. So, but yeah, in particular, your vision for moving things to the tea lands, we think that's a fantastic vision. We're really excited to be a part of that in terms of helping you with the funding there to make that a reality. We think it's a great path you've set the company on. We think it's a great way to use the funding we'll be able to help you to raise here.
Relocating Tea Journey to Asia, the heart of tea cultivation and culture, will reduce overhead and enable us to deepen our connection with growers and tea makers to better share the ongoing story of tea. By investing as little as $25, you reaffirm your support for a vibrant global community. Your investment will bring potential financial return by sharing in revenue, unlimited access to our publication for 1 year, and discounted renewals for as long as the publication is active, and exclusive content like consumer guidebook special issues and gift guides. To learn more, visit teajourney.oversub.me. First, we ask that you complete a 3-question survey to help us set a realistic budget for the move. There is no obligation. Intrigued by what you heard in today's podcast? Would you like to learn more from our global network of Tea Biz journalists and tea experts? Remember to visit the Tea Biz website for more comprehensive coverage. That's www.t-biz.com. Thanks for listening. Farewell till next week.
Produced by Adavita Studios. Connect your voice to the world.